Where is the Philippines now? How do you think the recovery momentum looks since the lockdowns were loosened?
Well, you have to start from where we started off, okay? In 2016, we instituted a series of tax reforms, essentially bringing up our tax collections and bringing it up to its highest ever in 22 years. So we were well prepared for this crisis. As you know, we were preparing for our build, but as it turns out, strong position is very much helpful for us in this crisis. In fact, this crisis right now for us is very strange because our inflation rate is very low, interest rates are very low, our peso is probably among the strongest in Southeast Asia, and we have a very high foreign reserves. It's almost 99 million US dollars. Okay. So essentially, we're quite well prepared for this. Our revenues through taxation has dropped because of the drop in demand. And we are covering the shortfall in our fund shortfall through borrowings. And first of all, we borrowed money from the multilateral agencies. Okay. And then hit the market last April with a $2.3 billion issue.
So sir, I want to get to some more points, and I think this is a good way to start. You had a good cushion going in. You're facing, you already just had a 16% GDP drop. What more may you need to do? I think in particular, the government got its latest advance of 540 billion pesos from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Are you inclined now, even with that good cushion you came in with, to make use of the additional 280 billion you can borrow from the central bank?
At the moment, we don't need to do that, but that's in our reserves. So we believe that our current borrowing program and our current revenue flow, which incidentally is 8% over our latest estimates for tax revenues, is going to hold us a bit. We're keeping the balance of our credit line with the central bank in reserve.
Okay, well, your government budget documents show that the short-term borrowing from the BSP could hit 1 trillion pesos this year. Does that an indication, when that was set up, that that's about how much you may need to borrow next year in 2021?
Yes, it's about right.
So you do anticipate borrowing more from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas?
Yes. Well, as I said, we'll keep that in reserve. Our first options are to go back into the commercial market. But, you know, if the economy doesn't perform as we expect, we will go back to them.
Do you have any concern about crowding out with your private borrowers in the Philippines?
No, absolutely not. Actually, our administration has injected a lot of liquidity into the market by reducing the reserve requirements of banks.
Right.
When we started out, the reserve requirements were around 18%, and now they are probably around 12%. So, and for every 100 basis points down is about 100 billion pesos.
Okay.
So, okay.
Well, let me ask you, I want to ask you about what you might do in terms of this sense. Every central bank's being asked in the world, every government, do you have more ammunition if you need to do more? Do you think there might be a need for a third pandemic relief measure for the Philippines?
At the moment, no. We are seeing a very strong recovery as we ease up the economy. You know, we have a very good economy. Unfortunately, the contagion has forced us to throttle it down. But as we open up, we can see a very strong recovery through jobs. You know, our lowest joblessness rate was in May, and that was 17%. But as we opened, we lessened that to 10% joblessness rate. Our aim is still to bring it down to around 5 or 6%.
Okay.
And
Are there any new taxes you might introduce? Are you going to sell off any more assets before President Duterte's term ends in 2022?
Well, we are not really seriously considering any taxes. Taxing our citizens when their incomes are down is not a good idea. As to selling assets, we're not that desperate yet. And besides, I'll tell you, most of our assets are in real estate and in mining operations. And quite frankly, the real estate market is uncertain yet at this point in time, although it has been holding quite well.
Okay.
So,
Are you?
know,
Oh, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
right. Go
All
ahead.
right. Well, how about the risk of rising defaults? Do you see any of that bubbling up at all? Is a concern that could be a systemic risk to the Philippines?
Are you talking about the private banks?
Certainly.
Yes. Anyway, we are prepared for that. We have introduced legislation to revive the setting up of special purpose vehicles so that banks can unload their souring assets. During the Asian crisis, it took them almost 5 years to set this up. We are just about to get the legislation passed for this. We are also asking the legislators for authority for the government to organize a company to which we will invite multilateral agencies, investments, and private sector investments to address problems that are beyond liquidity, to address solvency problems in the most important companies in the Philippines. So that legislation is coming along, and basically we're moving there. It's going to be something like TARP.
I want to ask you, you mentioned the peso, about how strong it's been, but I want to step back in the big picture because, we've seen this scramble for dollars throughout this COVID crisis. We saw the Fed swap lines. We've seen record dollar issuance. Why do the world's governments and companies need so many dollars right now? You're Secretary of Finance. You've been a businessman. You were the CEO of Philippines Airlines. What is your sense of this?
Well, in a crisis, everybody wants to make sure that their war chest is healthy, and because we don't know how long this thing's going to last. I completely agree with what the IMF says, that this recovery is going to be longer than expected, and there will be a lot of ups and downs. So we want to make sure that we have enough ammo in our war chest.
Quick final question before I let you go. The airlines, again, you were in the airline industry. Any special steps you might want to take or need to take for the airline industry in the Philippines?
Right now, we are discussing with the airlines. Actually, we've been talking to them since March, since the demand dropped. But, the airlines have gone through 5 or 6 iterations of the rescue program. And I've told them we are prepared to help you, but we are not going to lead the way. You are private sector. We expect the private sector banks to chip in, and we are going to be there for you when the whole entire financial package is ready.